Beth Zion Synagogue of Montreal, Quebec, is located in the borough of Côte-Saint-Luc on Hudson Avenue. The street has been since renamed to Sidney Shoham Place, named after the late Rabbi Emeritus, Rabbi Sidney Shoham. While the architect of the building is unknown, it is known that Rabbi Shoham played a significant role in assisting the architect in designing the building, which was finally completed in 1965, with the addition of the large sanctuary as depicted on the left of the building. 1953 was an important time for the borough of Côte-Saint-Luc, as the area's first 25 Jewish families had just moved in. It is therefore fitting that by the time the building was completed in 1965, the membership had increased to 1,000 families. The architectural style of the building can largely be categorized by its modern brutalist structure, as noted by its massive unfinished concrete shapes and its abrupt juxtapositions. We can note the post and lintel construction of the slabs of concrete that form the narthex directly outside the front area of the synagogue. When you enter the lobby, you notice again how prevalent the theme of exposed concrete is. It's noticeable in the post and lintel construction of the narthex that precedes the sanctuary, in the second floor hallways that precede the women's galleries, and as well in the ceiling here. Another architectural theme that I would like to introduce now, which is widely prevalent throughout the entire building, is the theme of fluting. It's noticeable here on the posts opposite the narthex which precedes the sanctuary. It also runs along the solid oak doors here and the ones that are inside that precede the sanctuary, and it runs along the panel above the stained glass behind the decorative tablets. In addition to the largely exposed concrete style of this building, the exterior was made mostly of brick, and that pattern continues to the inside, where it can be noticed on the opposite sides of the exterior of the sanctuary. Although the floors are covered mostly by carpeting to protect those from Montreal's harsh winters, the floors are made of terrazzo. The sanctuary is a 3-aisle basilican plan. You can see its long rectangular shape, the main aisle in the center, as well as the 2 narrower aisles on either side, divided by 4 rectangular concrete columns in each corner of the sanctuary. The narthex is on the west side, and each side of the women's gallery is flanked by a series of apses and long, narrow windows, almost like lancet windows, except without a Gothic arch at the top. They're just rectangular here. You can see the basilican style in further detail in the synagogue, with the ark located at the front of the synagogue in an apse, a large rectangular indentation, with the bima sort of behind it in the center of the synagogue. The ark is made of a series of large marble slabs overlapping on each other, modeled after the flutes of an organ. The pattern of fluting continues in the synagogue with these large panels of fluted oak which surround the apse at the front, around the ark. You can see the same theme of fluting in the solid oak doors at the back of the synagogue. It's fluted. You can see a pattern of fluting in the panel above the doors. And you can see the same theme I mentioned before of exposed brick in the back wall of the synagogue, although here the brick has a sort of skipping pattern to it where it leaves a space in between them. In keeping with the theme of exposed concrete, which you can see throughout the entire building, you can see that there's an exposed aggregate in the concrete of the women's galleries, which is a unique touch. The pattern of fluting continues on the other side of the women's galleries. The exposed aggregate has a large spaced fluting pattern to it. The ceiling maintains the theme of exposed concrete in the building. It has a series of reinforced concrete lintels running double in the horizontal direction and single in the vertical direction. Here there are a few noticeable details. On the left and the right side of the image, you can see the rectangular columns made of exposed concrete which support the ceiling as well as the gallery. They have no noticeable capital, they're just straight columns. On the top of the gallery, you can see a series of apses which flank the entire horizontal wall. Each apse is divided by a long narrow window, and inside each apse you can see another window as well as a register for HVAC. On the bottom of the gallery, rather than apses, in the same section where the apses would be, instead there are barrel vaults, which each are separated by a narrow window, and in each barrel vault there's a bench for seating and a stained glass design. If you look carefully, you can see in the edge of the mechitza that faces the middle aisle, the solid oak panel is fluted, but here it's fluted horizontally, whereas the rest of the synagogue has vertical fluting. Here you can see a closer image of the column in the corner. The top of it, where the capital would be, is an abrupt ending, where if I had to classify it, I would classify it as Doric, but really it's just an abrupt stop. Whereas most of the lighting in the ceiling comes from direct spotlights, the chandelier in the center has a unique modern design with unevenly spaced large spherical light bulbs. Here you can see an older image of the synagogue with its old bima before they replaced it with a modern glass mobile one on wheels. It has the same exposed aggregate concrete that you see in the women's galleries, and it's unfortunate that they replaced it because now the women's galleries are the only concrete in the synagogue where you can see that beautiful exposed aggregate. You can see a contrast in color in the carpeting, whereas the carpeting in the main area of the sanctuary is a light pink, the carpeting in the galleries is a dark red. You can also see the apses in more clear detail with the registers above them. The antecedent for Beth Zion Synagogue is the Unity Temple in Oak Park, Illinois, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and finished in 1908. They both have a brutalist design to them, composed of many juxtaposed rectangular and square shapes. Like Beth Zion, Unity Temple makes use mostly of reinforced concrete as the main architectural theme. However, Unity Temple does this mostly on the exterior, whereas Beth Zion's exterior is mostly brick and the reinforced concrete can be seen all throughout its interior. The sanctuary has a very similar basilican plan to that of Beth Zion's, most notably because of the 4 large rectangular-shaped columns in each corner. However, the 2 side aisles in this sanctuary are raised up from the floor level, whereas the ones in Beth Zion have floor level and then galleries above it. The ceiling in the sanctuary also employs a very similar grid-like technique to that of Beth Zion's. The one in Beth Zion employs a double and single approach with its lentils, whereas here it's in a perfect grid. From an ornamental perspective, there's a very strong similarity between Unity Temple and Beth Zion in that they both use large spherical light bulbs in their lighting systems. The Unity Temple was extraordinarily significant to its era, mostly from an emotional perspective, as it was a replacement for the Unity Church after it burnt down. It's also an historic landmark for good reason. It's widely considered to be the first modern structure, mostly due to the fact that it's built out of one single material, reinforced concrete. Beth Zion was significant to its era because it was the first place of worship for the first 25 Jewish families to reside in the borough of Côte Saint-Luc. The fluid and harmonious modern blend of exposed concrete, solid oak, and brick is what made Beth Zion Synagogue unique in the world of architecture at its time. This is what I believe made the synagogue a model for the entire world of architecture.